The Krillian detention facility hummed with tension as General Vextar stalked through the corridors, his forearms flexing with barely contained rage. His amber eyes blazed with the fury of a father whose cubs had vanished without a trace. "Search every cell block again," he roared at his subordinates, his voice echoing off the metallic walls. How does a pair of cubs simply disappear from the most secure facility on Krillis Prime? Captain Zethak cowered before the towering 8-foot general. "Sir, we've swept the entire complex twice. There's no sign of young Kextar and Lixara anywhere." The cubs, barely 3 cycles old, had been visiting the facility with their father when they'd somehow slipped away from their guardians. In a complex housing some of the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners, including captured human soldiers from the recent conflicts, their disappearance was both embarrassing and terrifying. Meanwhile, 3 levels down in the maximum security wing, Marine Sergeant James Mitchell sat cross-legged on the cold floor of his cell, his back against the wall. The human soldier bore the scars of the Battle of Kepler Station, a cybernetic arm replacing the one he'd lost, and a network of healing, cuts across his weathered face. But at this moment his expression was softer than it had been in months. 2 small furry forms were curled up against his chest, their tiny claws kneading his prison uniform as they slept. The Krillian cubs, no bigger than Earth house cats, but resembling a cross between wolves and lizards, had somehow found their way into his cell hours ago. James had initially been startled when the security barrier flickered and the cubs tumbled through. His first instinct had been to call for the guards, but something about their frightened whimpers had stopped him. They were clearly lost and scared, their large eyes wet with tears. "Hey there, little ones," he had whispered, slowly extending his flesh hand. The cubs had sniffed cautiously before pressing close to him, seeking warmth and comfort. Now, as their tiny chests rose and fell in peaceful sleep, James found himself gently stroking their soft fur. It reminded him of his daughter Liza back on Earth, how she used to fall asleep curled up against him during movie nights, her small form trusting and secure in his arms. The irony wasn't lost on him. These were the children of his enemies, the species that had declared war on humanity, claiming humans were too violent and unpredictable to be allowed among the civilized races of the galaxy. Yet here he was, a supposedly dangerous human warrior, serving as a living teddy bear for 2 alien toddlers. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the cell block. Heavy boots, multiple sets. This wasn't a routine patrol. James looked down at the sleeping cubs and made a decision that surprised even him. "Wake up, little ones," he whispered, softly. "I think your family's coming." The cubs stirred, blinking their large golden eyes. The smaller one, a female James had determined, made a soft mewling sound and tried to burrow deeper into his chest. The male cub yawned, showing tiny fangs, and looked up at James with what could only be described as affection. The cell block erupted with activity as General Vexitar himself appeared, flanked by a dozen guards with weapons drawn. The general's 4 arms were spread wide, ready for battle, until his eyes fell upon the scene before him. There sat the most feared human prisoner in their custody, a soldier who had single-handedly held off a Krillian assault squad for 6 hours at Kepler Station, cradling 2 tiny cubs like they were precious treasures. The cubs, sensing their father's presence, chirped happily but made no move to leave the human's protective embrace. "Father!" the male cub squeaked in the Krillian tongue. "The big alien has warm fur and tells good stories." General Vextar's mouth fell open. In all his years he had never seen his naturally suspicious cubs take to anyone so quickly, not even their own relatives. Yet here they were, completely at ease with a member of the species his government had deemed irredeemably savage. "Your cubs are safe," James said quietly, meeting the general's stunned gaze. "They were frightened when they found me. I have a daughter of my own. I know what it's like to worry." For a long moment the corridor was silent except for the soft purring of the cubs. The guards kept their weapons trained on James, but their certainty seemed shaken. The female cub, Lixara, looked up at James with huge eyes. "Will you sing the humming song again?" she asked in broken standard. James's throat tightened. He'd been humming an old Earth lullaby that he used to sing to Liza, the same one his own father had sung to him during thunderstorms. General Vextar watched in amazement as this human, this supposed monster, began to hum softly, his deep voice resonating through the cell. The cubs settled back against him, their eyes drifting closed once more. "Sir," Captain Zithak whispered, "should we extract the cubs by force?" The general raised one of his 4 hands, signaling silence. He was thinking of every military briefing he'd attended, every report claiming humans were incapable of true compassion, every justification for this war. Yet the evidence before his eyes told a very different story. "Sergeant Mitchell," the general said finally, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "My cubs seem to trust you. That is unusual." James looked up, still humming softly. "Children know," he said simply. "They haven't learned to hate yet." The profound truth of those words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Krillian Empire believed about humanity. General Vexter found himself wondering, if his own cubs could see something worth trusting in this human warrior, what else might his species be wrong about? As the cubs drifted back to sleep, the general made a decision that would change the course of the war. Some truths, he realized, could only be seen through the innocent eyes of children, eyes that saw not enemies, but simply someone strong enough to keep them safe.